Ladies and gentlemen, welcome you all to India HR Live, where change agents transform the world of HR. And today we are so excited and delighted to have a wonderful and amazing guest, Rudy Karsan. Let me welcome Rudy Karsan, CEO of Kenexa and IBM Company. Rudy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nisha. Let me start out by just saying I apologize. I've had a bit of a cold, so my voice may not come across as clearly as I would like it, but such is life.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. No problem. Glad you're here. Glad you are able to be here with us today. I know it's a really busy schedule. IBM Connect 2014 is coming up, and it's really, really an honor to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Wonderful. So as we talk more on this, the increasingly competitive employment market, staying relevant is not an option, but it's a necessity. And Judy is gonna talk more about those mega skills that you need to improve on, and that will equip you for the future. So, Rudy, what are some mega skills that our workforce, or let's just say an individual, should equip themselves for the future?
So the way I would think about it is take a step back. Okay? So when you really think about what's happening on the planet today, there are a number of mega trends that are happening. So let's break those down a little bit. There's 3 or 4 mega trends that are happening. The first one is this notion of big data. The way we use analytics in order to make decisions that in the past we either used intuition or experience or small pieces of data. And this rise, if you will, of data means that the decision-making skill set that is required is further accelerated. And so one of the mega skills that someone needs to have in order to operate in this world would be what I would call decision making. Decision making is an incredibly powerful skill. In the past, we would rely tremendously on the boss saying what to do. And that is now changing because there's a second trend that's taking place, which is the loss of hierarchy. A lot of the middle managers are being eliminated. And so that loss of hierarchy increases the need of ability to make decisions. And so there are a number of tools out there that are available. So I'll give you an example. A tool that I have used very successfully and I find extremely effective is to use what's called the Johari's window. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not, Rudy, and I would really, really love to learn from you.
Okay, so Johari's window is basically a 2x2 matrix. Okay, so what you have to do is on a sheet of paper, put 4 boxes in there and create a matrix 2x2. And then what you do is anytime you're trying to make a decision, you put it down on that piece of paper. So let's say all of us have been to college. So let me use college as an example, right? And you say, what are the important skills I want to get out of college in order for me to make a decision on the choices of courses I wish to take in terms of course choice, okay? And for example, let's say you say the 2 skills that I would like, the 2 mega skills I would like would be verbal presentation skills on one side, so that's your one dimension, and the second dimension is critical thinking, as an example, right? Then on that 4x4 box, you put down low, high for critical thinking, low, high for presentation skills. Then you map the 10 courses you're looking at and say, in this course, do I get low critical thinking skills, or high? In this course, do I get low presentation skills or high? And you put those 10 courses on that box. Now you look at the upper right-hand corner of that box, and all of a sudden you're able to identify, well, here are the 3 courses that would give me presentation skills in terms of high, and here is what will give me high in terms of critical thinking. So now I have simplified my decision making into forcing myself into bringing it down to a two-dimensional choice. So there are tools of this sort you can use in decision making that are going to sustain you for an entire career. So what I would suggest in terms of mega skills, the first one, acquire that skill of decision making. And the more we practice making those decisions, the more we turn around and force ourselves to make those calls, the easier it becomes over time, the less we second guess ourselves, and the deeper our expertise develops, the deeper our confidence builds, the easier it becomes for us to take positions on certain issues. So in terms of decision making, I would say I would rate that as one of the highest mega skills that somebody needs, primarily because of the onset of big data and the analytics associated with that, and this, what I call it, in this new topsy-turvy world of ours, the hierarchies that are being flattened. And these hierarchies that are being flattened are not only happening in enterprises, they're happening at a global level. Nation states are breaking up into smaller cohesive units. There's a lot of that stuff that's happening out there. So decision making to me is absolutely. So let me pause here and say, do you have any questions around this?
Yes, this is actually wonderful, Rudy, as you talk more about the decision-making skills that our workforce need to improve on. But going back to that big data, I really wanted to know, we have a diverse workers that are available at our workplace, with baby boomers to Gen Y and varieties of job. So what kind of a profile, irrespective of what profile they are doing, does this big data really affect them or them as an individual when they work in this workforce?
Yes, absolutely. So let me give you a very specific example, okay? In the HR world, we used to look at cost per hire as being one of the determining factors as to how effective the recruiting department used to work. And so what we would do is we would take our total spend divided by the number of hires and say our cost per hire is, let's assume it is 1 lakh rupees per hire for an engineer, okay? However, what does that really mean? In the days of big data, the cost per hire becomes meaningless, because if your attrition is equally high and you're not effectively hiring, then your cost per hire could be the lowest amongst the benchmark companies, but your attrition is the highest. Your total spend for recruiting would be higher than anyone else, simply because you got to refill the attrited employees. So in the old world, we used to treat cost per hire as gospel. In the new world, with this big data coming in and getting infused and being able to do the analytics, all of a sudden it's what's your cost per high performer? And you can get that data today. In the old days, you couldn't. So there's an example of where a really important metric from 5 years ago has lost relevance today. That number is something I don't hear at all anymore, for example. And cost per hire used to be the mantra 10 years ago. Today, I don't hear about it at all. So there's an example of how big data has come in as organizations and enterprises and individuals have been able to take additional information and create levels of analysis and judgment that now superseded the way we made decisions, call it a decade ago, or 5 years ago, even as recently as 2 years ago.
So do you see any skills gap or lack of talent when you look at the workforce to analyze these big data?
Yeah, I would say that big data scientists are going to be the #1 demand position over the next few years. From everything that I've seen, I think McKinsey has put some numbers out there that in the US alone, we're going to need about 600,000 big data scientists. And if I was guessing, in India, that number would probably be 2 to 3 times that number. And if I was working in the HR world today, and I was an HR practitioner, and somebody said to me, well, I'm only in HR because of my people-related skills, and I'm not strong on the math side, so don't bother me with that, I would say to that person, get out of HR. Because if you are there simply to be a people person, those days are numbered. The days of being that voice of the company and the voice of the employee, because you're in HR, is no longer relevant. You have to have the analytical skills in order to be able to not only accept and consume these large volumes of information, but be able to make sense out of it and tell stories from it. So if I was an HR practitioner today with my primary driver being people skills, I would say to you, pick those up or get out of it, because you're not going to be excelling in this profession in the years to come.
This is really wonderful insights, Rudy. And as you talk that particular people skills, I have this one question that has come up in my mind, which is very personal. What do you think about going or becoming a specialist rather than just a generalist? Because when you talk about HR, when they say, yeah, I'm a people person, are they trying to be more of a generalist person that they can fit in any kind of a climate? So would you prefer them being a specialist? Okay, these are skills that an organization want going forward in the future, and then you would be valuable to the organization.
That's a really insightful question, Nisha, because what is happening right now is there is a debate taking place in this world. Do I develop a level of expertise and understanding that spans across a number of disciplines and have a more holistic view to my career, or do I drive deep down one field? The answer is, I would say, do not think of it in terms of either or. Think of it in terms of and. What I mean by that is most people think of, let me do work-life balance, for example. I'm saying those days are gone. Think about juggling or blending. So develop silos of expertise. So instead of being a level 2 on a scale of 1 to 5 on 30 different subjects, pick 5 subjects and become a 5 in them. So pick silos of where you believe the expertise starts to climb. So for example, I'll use a very specific example. If I'm looking at attributes, okay, if I want to develop an attribute of mine, and I want to develop a skill of mine, clearly big data says my analytic skills are going to be something that's going to be essential in terms of decision making. Well, then the other part of the mega skills I would say is learn how to become flexible. And so some people will say, well, I can't be flexible. Well, my argument is if you've learned how to walk, you can be flexible. Every child can touch their toe to their face or to their nose. We were born with that flexibility. We chose to lose it. Well, regain it. And it's not that hard. So for example, if I am very physically capable, so I'm a sports person, start doing crossword puzzles. There's a great website called lumosity.com, Lumosity. Go there for 2, 3, 4 minutes a day. I still do that every day. And just keep your intellectual skills sharp. If I am in the US and I'm a Republican, well, then read the newspapers that are put out by the Democrats, so I can see a different point of view. And so expose yourself to different points of view, which will start to increase your flexibility. So that would be the second silo I would develop. So I would develop the analytics silo, I would develop the flexibility silo. And so that's how I would gain specialization, while at the same time having my eye around my entire universe, whatever that might be.
Wonderful, wonderful. So when I say, the struggle is not just to keep up, it's for a normal workforce or normal employee. And if you wanted to anticipate what is the future going to be, or how can I adopt this rapid change that are happening in the workforce, there is a notion that I have heard, like, whatever happens in the future, engagement starts with you. So what is your take on how that notion can be evolved, as we say, yes, if it is at work or if it is at your in your life, the engagement starts with you as an individual.
Right. So there has been in the HR world for a number of decades now this notion that engagement is the responsibility of the employer. I, the employer, am supposed to keep my workforce engaged. The point you bring up, Nisha, is extremely valid. Engagement is a two-way street. There is as much responsibility on you as an individual to become engaged as there is on your enterprise to engage you. And how do you start to become engaged yourself? The question is, what were you born to do? If you really think about it from that perspective, where do I, in my career, see the bullseye meeting? Where can I meet my pay requirements, the economic engine to sustain my family and myself? What is my purpose? Where are my passions? Those three P's in mind and say, let me check off those three boxes. As I manage my career, engagement will be more or less guaranteed. Because if you are doing something where you have a deep sense of purpose, you're meeting your passions, and you have an economic engine that makes sense, you are one of maybe less than 10% of the people on this planet. You have really hit a life that most of us dream of. And so that's where I would start. Your engagement starts from inside you, driven by what you need to survive on this planet, so that you are a contributor and you're not somebody who is a taker. And that internal yearning that we all have for greatness can be then blown up, and we can turn around and really be at a place in our careers where we are truly living the life that we choose to live.
So is it like, if we want to have a great life, we need to be fully engaged at work?
So from the research that I have seen, and I'd written a book called We, which was a New York Times bestseller, so we did a lot of research for that. There is significant data that shows there is what's called the spillover effect. And that spillover effect is engagement at work really creates engagement at home. Engagement at work makes us into better partners, better spouses, better children, better community members, and that ability to transcend your work and take your entire being with you wherever you're at is an extremely powerful notion. So the data does support the fact that if you are engaged at work, the spillover effect into your community and into your overall life is very, very high.
Great, great. And to our audience, if you have any questions to Rudy, tweet your question to India HR Live hashtag. We are talking more about mega skills that will equip you for the future, and Rudy is talking a little bit about engagement, and engagement starts with you. Rudy, while we're talking more about engagement, I wanted to stick to that particular concept in the next question as well. Do you think happy employees are engaged employees? I remember reading this conversation that I had with you during Drive Through HR, and you quoted your book, and I just gone through that book. It's really, really amazing to have that. So I wanted our audience to hear a little bit about, can a happy employees be an engaged employees? Do you think so?
Right. So I think I think we need to really distinguish between what we mean by happy and engaged.
Hmm.
So a lot of times you can get surface happy but not feel fulfilled. Engagement is that notion which is bigger than happiness. It is a sense of purpose, it's a sense of yearning where from inside what I want to do, I find a way to express myself. And so to me, engagement is a notion or a concept that is broader than happiness. Happiness is a sense of overall comfort, safety, and a sense of being not mad or not sad. Engagement is a sense of joy, it's a sense of being alive, it's a sense of being in the moment, it's a sense of making a difference. And so to me, those are two kind of separate notions.
That's right, Rudy. And I wanted to tie that engagement factor with the mega skills that you have just talked about. So how to keep up with this rapid change, or how to keep an employee from not being obsolete. So just for us normal regular employee that are in our workforce, um, what are some mega skills? You talked about big data and you talked about critical thinking and decision making. What is a key skill, one single key skill that an employee should have or need to evolve? What would be the change that is going to happen in his life or in his work world?
It's hard to say one, but if you said to me two,
All right.
I would say in today's world, it would be presentation slash communication skills and
Mhm.
information gathering skills. So let me elaborate on both those.
Sure.
Information is now aplenty. How do I distinguish good from bad? And what do I choose to consume? And that's a skill set that all of us need to have in today's day and age. And the ability to articulate and communicate our feelings and our thoughts is extremely important as the world becomes more social. And the technology is driving us to become more social. So those oral and written presentation skills, whether you're sending out a tweet or doing a Facebook posting or doing an exchange like we're having right now, is absolutely critical. So if you ask me for two, I would say presentation skills, both oral and written, and ability to simulate and really capture information that's valid for you.
Great, wonderful, Rudy. So let's take some questions from our audience, and we have the first one that is from Nubur Patek. She's asking, in the reverse, true that if one is engaged at home, is better engaged at work?
Uh, I I can only speak anecdotally about that because there is no data that backs that up. But generally, what I have found is happy people or engaged people or satisfied people tend to be generally satisfied because at least they start their day up. Now, the day may kind of grind away at you and you leave down, but at least you start the day up, so you're up ahead of others. So generally, anecdotally, I would say that's probably a true statement, but I can't point to any research that says there is some evidence based on that statement. I haven't seen any research to that effect.
Right. And the next one is from Amy Thinking. That's her Twitter ID. I'm not sure what's her full name. How do employees and leadership get to trust each other?
Trust is a notion that we have looked for for a long time. And so I would say the two drivers of trust are transparency and vulnerability. What I mean by transparency is rather than just saying trust me, show the data and show the information and explain the decision making. Where I think leaders make a lot of errors is they tell you to do something without giving the justification or blaming it on somebody else. You're doing this because my boss told me to tell you to do this. You know what a jerk he is. And so you're blaming somebody else in order to explain your action. I would say transparency says you're doing this because it is going to change the financial statements of the company this way, or because of risk mitigation associated with some of our factories that have some health issues, whatever it might be. Vulnerability is equally important, because when I become vulnerable, if I say to you I'm ashamed of something or I'm scared of something, there is an immediate level of trust. And in today's world, people are more and more in front of the camera and in front of the social devices. They have forgotten how to be vulnerable. They've forgotten how to have the tears form in their eyes, forgotten how to show their humanity. And so it's hard for us to trust that face or that mask that comes up. So the deeper we can show our true emotions, the more vulnerable we can become, the easier it is for us to then start to trust one another. So I would say the two drivers of trust are transparency and vulnerability.
I'm really happy to hear this from you. And in fact, I wanted to add one more thing when we talk about this vulnerability. I'm sorry, my accent. So in the workforce, do we need to see more of the managers or leadership team embracing failure at workplace so that their
Absolutely.
employees, yeah,
Absolutely. To me, there is a great YouTube, which I can't remember the name of that YouTube, but there's a great YouTube around research done with vulnerability. And after the show, I can maybe email you the link on it, where there's been a lot of research done that shows, in fact, that vulnerability does not only drive trust, it also drives overall life satisfaction and resilience in the way you can handle the stormy days that all of us inevitably face. And part of that vulnerability is not only accepting failure, but embracing it. By being able to say, I am wrong. I did mess up. I made the following four mistakes. And not blaming the environment. It's really hard to do that. It's really hard for somebody to say, I messed up, I screwed up, right? And you saw this in this exchange.
yes,
My computer crashed.
hmm
It's the storm in Philadelphia. I do the same thing too. And so it's really hard for us as human beings to say, I am fully accountable for what happened, and I accept it, whatever the consequences are. The ability to be able to accept and embrace that failure, to turn around and to absorb it into your system, strengthens you dramatically.
right. Great, great, Rudy. I mean, it's really, really an honor to have you here with us today. And finally, I wanted to ask one last question uh, to our to help our audience. As you talk more about vulnerability and the skills that our managers should evolve, what is one single skill that you want to see young and upcoming HR professionals to improve on?
I would say that the HR community has, over the years, been at the doormat of the organization. They've been the tail way back there. And a lot of HR practitioners have tended to become cowards. And what I mean by that is, my boss told me, or the line manager said this. And so if there is one attribute that I would beg the HR community to develop in this new world, and that would be courage. Have the courage of your convictions, understand the data, Be willing to take a stand on issues. Be willing to do what's the right thing for your enterprise. And that, by that I mean the entire enterprise, the employees, the shareholders, the customers. Start to develop that innate courage that it takes to hold your position and hold your ground on issues. And so if the HR community, which has now for generations and for decades been at the doormat of the organization, if those individuals stand up and become counted, then I believe that HR will be where its destiny means it to be, which is right at the C-suite, helping an enterprise make strategic decisions based on its people in order to service its customers. So develop courage and learn your position, but make sure you're well equipped to do so before you get there.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much, Rudy, for being here with
It's
us
a
today.
pleasure.
Yes, and thank you so much to your entire team. I know we had a little bit of a technical issue in between, so they helped us a lot. So thank you exclusively to your team as well.
Take care and bye-bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye. And to our audience, thank you so much for putting up with these technical glitches. It happens. But we had a wonderful, wonderful show and had a lot of insights from Rudy. And thank you so much to all of your tweets and social shares. And so stay tuned. We are going to see you next week at India HR Live.